Hey guys, welcome back. It's Sarah. Today is my birthday. Actually, today's my actual birthday. See? January 29th. I'm turning 29 on the 29th, and it's also Chinese New Year today. I started posting videos on YouTube when I was 20, so if you've been along for the ride, you've been with me for almost a decade now. This is my last birthday in my 20s, so I just want to talk about some of the lessons I learned along the way. I feel like you guys saw so many of the mistakes I've made already, but I've definitely learned some lessons. I'm also doing a little birthday dinner tonight, so I'm gonna get ready and talk through some of the things I've learned. And I don't mean for this to come across as like a holier than thou preachy kind of way, because the reason why I have this list of things that I learned is because I've lived through it. I've done most of the things on the list. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first piece of advice that I'm gonna give you is to always go for the plan A. I think there's no better time than in your 20s to really take risks, make mistakes, fail again, recover. The great thing about having nothing at all is you have nothing to lose. Like, everyone's starting from square one at 20. You don't have a stable life like children, or really even too many material things that you're attached to. And I feel like that's the perfect time to take risks, to really go for what you want. And I consider myself a pretty self-assured person for the most part, but even in my early 20s, like, so many people were saying, oh, you know, YouTube is just part-time, it's just a hobby, like, go get a real job. And this is not just online, like, people in my personal life have said this. And you almost need this delusional tunnel vision where you just have to go for exactly what you want to do. And speaking from my own experience, YouTube is great for that because no one can physically stop you from filming and uploading. Yeah, your equipment might be shit, but you can still do it if you want to. And then when I hit my first roadblock, which is trying to find management, and I was cold emailing so many agencies, probably over 20 agencies, like, hey, I'm Sarah, this is my YouTube channel. And I've had so much rejection. Most people just didn't reply at all, but then I would take every meeting I could get. And I was 22 when this happened. I've told the story before, but I went to an agency and they were just like, you're not what we're looking for. Like, if you want to be in the beauty space, you just have to lose a certain amount of weight. You don't have the look we're looking for. If I doubted myself, that would have been devastating. But I kept going. I was like, okay, you don't want to do it. I'll keep cold calling. Another thing I always want to do is to start my own brand. And it's insane how delusional I was. With my 10K followers, I would literally email the company that started Kylie Cosmetics and be like, hey, by the way, do you want to start brand together? Like, I did not give a fuck. Like, the worst thing they can say is no. Actually, they didn't even say no. They just did not respond, obviously. But I still really want to start a brand. And if y'all have been with me for a long time, you know this. I started a brand called Signature by Sarah when I was 21, I think. And our product was this beautiful glitter body butter that is so beautiful. It's called Diamond Skin. And I was just like, no one wants to do this brand with me. I'm just gonna do it myself. So I was emailing the manufacturers myself and did all of it myself. And I barely broke even. I'm pretty sure I lost money there. But I tried and I failed. But because of that experience, it prepared me for such a beauty in the future, you know? And yes, maybe that was a failure, but I'm so glad I tried and understood like what launching a product feels like, even in a very, very small scale, because when Sachi Beauty came along, I knew exactly what I wanted and knew exactly what to do. And you just have to be your biggest cheerleader. And I feel like a lot of times for people in their 20s, if you lack that confidence and self-assurance, it's very easy for other people to instill that fear in you that you're gonna fail. And then you settle for plan B from the beginning. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with having a plan B. You will never regret trying and failing as much as you regret never trying at all. And that applies to your career, relationships. I think it's so important to take all the risks you can take when you're young. And even if you fail or people talk about you, it's not the end of the world. And I think it's also really good practice to develop thicker skin for the rest of your 20s and the rest of your life. The next piece of advice I have is try to do one hard thing at a time. This is something that took me, I think, around 25 to learn. You're starting from square one. You're gonna start noticing there are a lot of skills that you lack, and that's completely okay. Like, you are supposed to be starting from scratch. I felt like I was so behind because there were so many things I wasn't good at or habits that I wanted to get rid of, but I didn't know how to change yet. And what I really had to learn to do is to give each difficult task its time and space. So what do I mean by that? When I first moved out of Hong Kong, I was so stressed out from the move that there really isn't any other big goal I could put on top of that. And then I got to a more of a stable place, and then I was able to focus all my energy into starting Sachi Beauty. And once that was kind of taking off, then I could focus more on my personal life. And then I can look into, okay, what else can I improve? Okay, maybe drinking isn't good for me anymore. Let me stop doing that. And that deserved its own time. And then after that, I'm like, maybe I should stop smoking so much. I'm still on nicotine gum, but still, I've made a lot of progress. And then after that, I can focus on cooking for myself, which is a skill I didn't have in my early 20s. But when I gave all of these challenges the time that it deserved, it really set me up for success. It's like complete night and day. And then in a couple months, I was able to cook 3 meals a day, 7 days a week. And I would have never been able to do that if I'm also moving and trying to start a business and trying to do all these things at the same time. I think not taking on too much is very important if you want to set yourself up for success. And it's really about having empathy for yourself. There's only so many hours. There's only so much the human mind can take on. Be gentle with yourself. Understand that challenges take time. Give each important challenge the time that it deserves. The next lesson I learned, which I definitely have made this mistake many times, is to lock in and stop getting distracted by boys. Now, if you're in a healthy, happy relationship and he's treating you like a princess, then that's great. That deserves time and energy. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is those few months to a year long situationships that we get ourselves into in our 20s. Now, I get it. We all have our little crushes. Honestly, looking back at some of the crushes I had in my 20s, like it makes me want to peel my skin off and eat it. Like when I have a flashback of a date I went on, I need to literally scream my embarrassment out of my system. Now, I'm not saying you can't date around and meet more people, but if you're fighting for your life for a text back from a guy that doesn't care if you live or die, that's mental illness, babes. And I'm saying this because I've been there. What I mean is just if someone truly wants to hang out with you, and this applies to friends too, if they actually like you, you don't have to try that hard to spend time with them or talk to them. I think as women, we're so good at trying to convince ourselves that a bad situation is good. And like, yeah, you can be a little delusional when you're younger, but if a guy doesn't want you, he doesn't want you. And nothing good will come out of trying to beg and plead and play games to try to get their attention. It's a losing game every time. I wish I didn't waste all that precious time in my 20s. When someone actually likes you, it should feel easy. And another thing to look out for is if all of your conversations with your friends always involve a guy's name and you're always obsessing over this guy and this is all you can talk about, then you have definitely lost the plot a little bit. There's so much to experience in your 20s. There's so many things you can do, and you're spending your precious time in your 20s trying to get a text back, babe. All this to say, it's okay to obsess over a man, but don't let it be a cycle and just keep it pushing. The next lesson I learned is your emotions might not always be correct. It's totally valid to go through whatever emotions you feel, but your emotions aren't always reflective of the size of the situation. So for example, when I first moved out of my house, the first night I was in my first apartment, I felt so scared, I felt so lonely, and I was just crying nonstop. Like I was terrified. And almost after every major decision I've made in my 20s, I always had that moment where I'm like, holy shit, what the f did I just do to myself? But it does not mean you made the wrong decision. Sometimes change can be emotionally difficult, and sometimes it takes time for your emotions to adjust, and it's totally fine. This can also apply to breakups, whether it's a romantic breakup or a friendship breakup. Sometimes it's so excruciatingly painful to sever your attachment to someone that you thought you were going to spend every day with, but that does not mean it's the right decision to stay. And if you're always trying to avoid that emotional pain, it will make you scared of change, and you might end up in situations that aren't the best for you. So if you recently went through a really big change, allow the emotions to come, feel it, face it, and then let it pass. 9 times out of 10, you'll get through it, you'll adjust, and you'll be just fine. And I feel like everyone says this in their advice videos, but it's important. Be very picky with your friends. I had this long list of things that I knew I was looking for in a romantic partner, but I didn't have a list at all when I was picking my friends, and that's where I fucked up. There are people that you might be spending every single day with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they are the best for you. And of course, it's also important to recognize when you do have a good friend and try to nurture those relationships. A good friend will want what is genuinely best for you. And what I learned is who stands the test of time is someone who's low maintenance and very secure with themselves. I think a lot of times when you're going through your 20s, you're not the best version of yourself. Sometimes there can be a lot of jealousy or insecurity that you project to your friends. And of course, this is something you need to reflect on for yourself as well. And that leads to people being very judgmental and negative. And they won't say it to your face, but a lot of times it'll come out in like little jokes, like girl, what the fuck are you wearing? Even though you know you're serving. Little comments like that, how supportive they are. They say that it's really difficult to find a friend who is there for you when you're down, but it's even harder to find a friend that's there for you when you've accomplished something. Like think about your own friend group. And if you just got a promotion or just got engaged, or you have some really good news where you're very happy about it, can you tell this person and trust that they 100% are happy for you? They're not thinking, oh, you're engaged, but I'm still single, or oh, you got promoted, how come I didn't get that promotion? How many people are genuinely happy for you and celebrating with you? And finding someone who actually want what's best for you is actually very, very rare. It's actually really hard to come across good friends. So when you have one, make sure you're really nurturing those relationships. But if all your friends could talk about are boys, they're always gossiping, always want to talk about other people, those are signs of insecurity. And you might not feel it right away, but over time, that is not good for you. It's not good for your confidence. It's not good for your mind. So definitely pick your friends wisely. Next, this might be a little hypocritical because this is technically kind of an advice video, but don't take advice from everyone. You can't just take advice from everybody and anybody. In your 20s, especially your early 20s, you're entering this new era of your life. You're probably a bit unsure about yourself, and that makes you very vulnerable to everybody's opinions. And I know this is definitely true for me. If I'm asking for everyone's advice, I am waiting for someone to talk me into the decision or talk me out of it. And every time you feel like you need everyone's advice, you are saying to yourself that you don't trust your own judgment. Now, I'm not saying you can't have a good mentor or talk to someone you trust about something you're unsure about, but something very important in your 20s is to find your own path and make your own decisions. And that's the best way, I think, to grow self-esteem in your 20s, is to trust that you are someone who can make good decisions. And if you constantly delegate that responsibility to the people around you, again, you're saying to yourself that you don't trust your own judgment. Even if the person giving the advice has the best intentions, it just might not apply. Everybody has a different risk tolerance, different vision for their life, different priorities, different values. If I followed everybody's advice, I probably would still be in a toxic relationship. I probably wouldn't have moved. I wouldn't have started my business. So practice using your own discernment. You're grown up now. You can make these decisions. And even if you make the wrong decision, it's so much better to learn that lesson in your 20s than to learn it in your 30s and 40s. I think it's okay to listen to advice, but don't rely too heavily on everyone's opinion about what you should do with your life. And that includes your parents. If your parents are dead set on you having a certain career, but you know in your heart that that's not right, you need to have enough trust in yourself that you can try something different, even if it hasn't been tried, even if your entire friend group is doing something else. Like if you're really into fashion and that's not something anyone in your friend group wants to pursue, you need to be confident enough in your intuition and your unique talent to go on that path, even if you have to go on that path alone. Next piece of advice I have is be the broke friend. I think there's no better time to be the broke friend than in your 20s. No one's really judging you if you have a roommate or if you have to take public transit. Like everyone's in their 20s trying to figure it out. So if you have to skip out on dinner at a very fancy restaurant, or if your friends want to go on a trip, it's completely okay to set your own boundaries. Don't get peer pressured into doing what all your friends are doing and neglecting your own goals. Like even though I am in this content creator influencer world, I still can't math how people are affording their lifestyles. And I feel like a lot of people are going into debt trying to match other people's lifestyles. And it's this endless game of trying to outdo one another. And that is a game you do not want to play in your 20s. You do not have to wear the most expensive things. You do not have to go to the most expensive restaurants. You do not have to go on every trip your friends want to go on. Now, I'm definitely a lot more financially comfortable than I was when I was in my early 20s. Thank you, YouTube. But even last year, I had a friend ask me to go on a trip. And at that point in my life, I had certain goals to save a certain amount of money. I want to be able to save and support my family in my 30s, and it just wasn't the right time for me to be splurging like that, so I declined. Of course, there's a time and place to spend money on yourself. You can definitely do that in your 20s, but just make sure you're actually investing in yourself and you're actually making yourself happy and not just succumbing to social pressures. That's probably the worst reason to spend money in your 20s. You have the rest of your life to get that nice bag. You do not have to get yourself in debt to do it, just because your friends have that bag. Also, I ran out of my Tanghulu Candy lip elixir, so I'm just using a sample. Okay, my makeup is done. Like, I just wanted a very clean, simple beat, but with glitter everywhere. So now for hair, I kind of want a half up, sleek in the top, and then a soft bend in the ends. I don't know, we'll see how it looks. One of the last things I'll say is learning how to set boundaries and communicate your feelings early will save you a lot of relationships. That's something that I was never really taught in my household. You're kind of just supposed to bottle it up. I think especially because I'm the oldest daughter. I literally had a conversation with my friend Tiff when I was 22, I think. 22 or 23. I was complaining to her about the person I was seeing at the time, she was like, you know, you can just talk to them, right? And it was such a foreign concept to me because I thought any difficult conversation has to be confrontational, and it really doesn't. You do not have to come in with a bunch of negative energy. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be aggressive. You can literally just clearly, kindly communicate your boundaries, and whether or not they respect your boundaries, that's another thing, and that's up to them. That's not something you can control. What you can control is whether or not you communicate that boundary to them, and you can control whether or not you respect other people's boundaries. I'm trying this glitter spray for the first time. I feel like it would look really good in flash. I'm gonna put a bit on my body as well. Oh my god, do you see that glitter? This is the outfit, and I'm ready for my birthday dinner. The last piece of advice I'm gonna leave you with is cut yourself some slack. Some of what I said earlier might come off very harsh, but you, just like everyone else, is figuring out your 20s for the first time in your life. And we've all made so many mistakes. I know I have. Even if you feel like you didn't try your best your entire 20s, one decade in the grand scheme of things is really not gonna make or break your life. Go at your own pace and trust the timing of your life. You will figure it out. Trust me. And I'll see you guys next week. Bye.